Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. Today the topic is, how to create a research design. We would be providing you with a step-by-step guide on how you can design your research on your own. So, without any further delay, let us head straight to the topic. A research design is a method for employing empirical data to answer your research topic. A well-thought-out research design ensures that your techniques are aligned with your research goals, that you collect high-quality data, and that you apply the appropriate type of analysis to answer your questions while relying on reliable sources. This enables you to get valid and reliable findings. Choosing a research design necessitates deciding on your general objectives and strategy. The research design you'll employ. Your subject selection criteria or sampling methodologies. Your strategies for gathering data. The techniques you'll use to gather information. Your ways of analyzing data. A study design may be required as a standalone assignment, or it may be part of a broader research proposal or project. In either case, think about which strategies are the most relevant and practical for resolving your question. Step 1. Think about your objectives and strategy. You should have a clear notion of the research subject you wish to investigate before you begin designing your study. There are numerous approaches you might take to answer this issue. Your study design decisions should be guided by your objectives and priorities. Start by considering what you want to accomplish. The first decision you must make is whether you will use a qualitative or quantitative method for your research. When taking a qualitative approach, recognize and comprehend subjective feelings, beliefs, and ideas. Learn everything there is to know about a certain situation or culture. Investigate challenges that have received less attention and come up with creative ideas. While a quantitative method is used, calculate variables and write down their frequencies, averages, and correlations. Hypotheses describing the relationships between variables are put to the test. Evaluate the efficacy of a novel therapy, program, or product. Qualitative research designs are more adaptable and inductive, allowing you to change your strategy based on what you learned during the research process. Quantitative research designs are more prescriptive and logical, with variables and hypotheses set before data collection. A mixed methods design that incorporates parts of both methodologies is also an option. You can acquire a more complete view of the subject you're studying and increase the reliability of your conclusions by integrating qualitative and quantitative information. When planning a study, keep both practical and ethical factors in mind. When planning your research, you must consider both scientific and practical factors. You must also consider research ethics if your study involves people or animals. 1. How much time do you have to gather data and write up your findings? 2. Will you be able to obtain the information you require, for example, by traveling to a specific location or contacting specific individuals? 3. Do you possess the requisite research abilities, for example, statistical analysis or interview techniques? 4. Are you going to need ethical approval? Make sure that your choices are practical at each level of the research design process. Step 2. Decide on which type of research design you want. There are various sorts of research designs to choose from in both qualitative and quantitative approaches. Each category serves as a foundation for the general shape of your study. Quantitative research designs come in a variety of shapes and sizes. There are 4 different types of quantitative designs. You can evaluate cause and effect relationships with experimental and quasi-experimental designs, whereas descriptive and correlational designs can be used to measure variables and characterize relationships between them. Let us talk about some design style and their characteristics and purpose. Experimental design. It's used to see if there's a link between two events. Manipulation of an independent variable and measurement of its effect on a dependent variable are both involved. The subjects are divided into groups at random. In most cases, it's done in a controlled setting, e.g. a lab. Quasi-experimental. It's used to see if there's a link between two events. It's similar to an experiment, but without the random assignment. It's common to compare the results of previous groups. Frequently carried out in a natural setting. Correlational. Used to see if, and how strongly, two variables are linked. Variables are monitored without being influenced. Descriptive. Describes traits, averages, and trends, among other things. The variables are measured without being influenced. You can gain a detailed view of traits, trends, and relationships in the real world using descriptive and correlational approaches. However, because correlation does not indicate causality, you cannot draw conclusions regarding cause and effect. However, this approach is unable to establish a causal link between the two variables. Experiments are the most effective technique to test cause and effect relationships without risking the results being influenced by extraneous variables. Their controlled environments, on the other hand, may not always mirror how things work in the actual world. They're also more complex and costly to put in place. Qualitative research designs come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Qualitative research designs are less well defined. This method focuses on acquiring a thorough understanding of a certain context or phenomenon, and it allows you to be more creative and adaptable in your research design. Some common qualitative design types are taked below. When it comes to data gathering, they frequently take similar tactics, but when it comes to data analysis, they focus on distinct issues. Let us talk about some design style and their characteristics and purpose. Study of a case. A thorough examination of a given topic, e.g. a place, event, organization, etc. Data can be gathered through a variety of ways and sources. The emphasis is on acquiring a comprehensive understanding of the case. Ethnography. A detailed examination of a certain community's or group's culture. Extensive immersion and careful observation are used to acquire data. Describes and interprets beliefs, conventions, social processes, and so forth. Theoretical foundations. The goal is to inductively create a hypothesis by methodically studying qualitative data. Phenomenology. The goal of this method is to describe the lived experiences of participants in order to better comprehend a phenomena or event. Step 3. Determine your target population and sample strategy. Your research design should spell out who or what your study will focus on, as well as how you'll select participants or subjects. In research, a population refers to the total group from whom you wish to draw conclusions, but a sample refers to the smaller group of people from which you'll actually collect data. Defining the demographics of the people. Plants, animals, organizations, texts, countries, and other objects can all be included in a population. It usually refers to a group of persons in the social sciences. Will you, for example, target folks from a specific demographic, area, or background? Are you looking for people who work in a specific field or have a specific medical condition, or who use a specific product? The easier it is to collect a representative sample, the more precisely you define your population. Methods of sampling. Even with a narrowly defined population, collecting data from every individual is rare. Instead, you'll gather information from a sample. There are two basic methods for selecting a sample: probability sampling and non-probability sampling. The sampling method you select has an impact on how confidently you can generalize your findings to the entire population. Some quick pointers about each of them. Sampling by chance. Random approaches are used to pick the sample. It's mostly employed in quantitative studies. Makes it possible to draw solid statistical conclusions about the population. Non-probability sampling is a method of collecting data that is not based on, the sample was chosen in a non-random manner. This method is used in both qualitative and quantitative studies. It's easier to achieve, but there's a higher chance of bias. The most statistically valid approach is probability sampling, but it's typically tough to execute unless you're working with a very small and accessible group. Many research utilizes non-probability sampling for practical reasons, but it's crucial to be aware of the limits and examine potential biases. You should always try to collect a sample that is as representative of the population as feasible. In qualitative research, case selection is important. Sampling may or may not be necessary for some qualitative designs. In an ethnography or a case study, for example, the goal is to gain a comprehensive understanding of a single situation rather than generalize to a community. Rather than sampling, you may simply try to gather as much information as possible on the context you're researching. You must still carefully evaluate your case or community decision in these types of designs. You should be able to explain why this instance is appropriate for answering your research question. For example, you may choose a case study that highlights an unexpected or overlooked element of your research problem, or you could examine multiple cases that are very similar or very different. Step 4. Decide on the data collecting strategies you'll use. Methods for directly measuring variables and acquiring data are known as data collection methods. They enable you to get first-hand expertise and unique perspectives on your research topic. You can utilize a single data gathering method or a combination of approaches in a single study. Methods of surveying. By directly asking people about their thoughts, behaviors, experiences, and qualities, surveys allow you to collect data. Questionnaires and interviews are the two most used survey methodologies. Questionnaires. In quantitative research, this is more common. It can be distributed online, over the phone, through the mail, or in person. Typically, closed questions with few options are provided. Data can be acquired from a large number of people in a consistent manner. Interviews. In qualitative research, this is more common. The researcher conducted the interview in person, over the phone, or online. Allow people to respond in their own words most of the time. With a smaller group, ideas can be discussed in more depth. Methods of observation. Observations allow you to collect data invisibly, without relying on self-reporting, by observing traits, behaviors, or social interactions. Observations can be done in real time while taking notes, or audiovisual recordings can be made for subsequent analysis. They can be both qualitative and quantitative in nature. The observation is quantitative. Counting or measuring in a systematic manner. Prior to the event, categories and criteria were established. Qualitative research. Taking copious notes and creating thorough descriptions. It is possible to keep track of all important observations. Other data collection methods. Depending on your profession and topic, there are a variety of additional ways to collect data. A few of data collection methods in the field are, collecting a sample of texts, e.g. speeches, articles, or social media posts, for data on cultural norms and narratives in the media and communication. Psychology, collecting data on factors like attention, emotional response, and reaction time using technologies like neuroimaging, eye tracking, or computer-based tasks. Tests or assignments are used in education to obtain data on knowledge and skills. Physical sciences, collecting data on topics like weight, blood pressure, and chemical composition using scientific instruments. If you're not sure which data gathering methods will work best for your study plan, read some papers in your field to see what they utilized. Secondary information. If you don't have the time or resources to gather data from the community you're interested in, you can rely on secondary data obtained by other researchers, such as datasets from government surveys or past studies on the subject. You can run your own analysis using this raw data to answer new research topics that the original study didn't cover. Secondary data can help you broaden the scope of your research by giving you access to much larger and more diverse samples than you could gather alone. However, because you don't have any say in which variables to assess or how they're measured, the conclusions you can draw may be limited. Step 5. Make a plan for data collection. You must determine exactly how you will utilize your methods to collect data that is consistent, accurate, and unbiased in addition to deciding on your approaches. In quantitative research, where you must properly describe your variables and verify your measurements are trustworthy and valid, methodical processes are very critical. Operationalization. Some variables, such as height and age, are simple to measure. However, you'll frequently be dealing with abstract concepts such as satisfaction, fear, or competence. Turning these hazy ideas into measurable indications is what operationalization entails. Which events or activities will you count if you're employing observations? Which questions would you ask and what range of responses will you provide if you use surveys? You can also use or adapt existing materials meant to measure the topic you're interested in, such as questionnaires or inventories that have already been proven to be reliable and valid. Validity and dependability. Validity means that you're measuring the topic you're interested in, while reliability means that your results can be consistently replicated. Reliability. Is your metric consistent in capturing the same notion over time? Is it able to give the same results in a variety of situations? Do all of the questions measure the same thing? Validity. Are all components of the concept tested in your measuring materials? Is there a link between it and other metrics of the same concept? Your measurement materials should be well researched and carefully designed for valid and reliable findings. Plan your procedures so that each participant experiences the same steps in the same order. If you're creating a new questionnaire or other instrument to evaluate a specific concept, a pilot study allows you to test the validity and reliability of the instrument ahead of time. Procedures for sampling. You'll need a solid plan for how you'll contact and recruit your chosen sample in addition to picking a suitable sampling method. This entails making decisions on issues such as, how many people do you need for sufficient sample size? What criteria will you use to identify eligible individuals, both for inclusion and exclusion? What method will you use to contact your sample, mail, online, phone, or in person? If you're utilizing a probability sampling method, make sure that everyone who is chosen at random actually takes part in the study. What steps will you take to ensure a high response rate? How will you eliminate bias and assure a representative sample if you're employing a non-probability method? Management of data. It's also critical to develop a data management strategy for organizing and keeping your information. Are you going to have to transcribe interviews or enter data for observations? Any sensitive data should be anonymized and safeguarded, and it should be backed up on a regular basis. When it comes to analyzing your data, keeping it well organized will save you time. It may also assist other researchers in validating and supplementing your findings. Step 6. Choose your data analysis methods. Raw data alone will not be able to answer your study query. The final phase in the research design process is to think about how you'll analyze the data. Analyzing quantitative data. Statistical analysis will almost certainly be used in quantitative research. You can use statistics to summarize your sample data, estimate probabilities, and test hypotheses. You can summarize your sample data using descriptive statistics in terms of the information's dispersal, e.g. the frequency of each score on a test. The data's predominant trend, e.g. the mean to describe the average score. Variability in the data, e.g. the standard deviation to describe how spread out the scores are. The kind of computations you can perform are determined by the precision with which your variables are measured. You can do the following with inferential statistics: based on your sample data, make population estimations. Hypotheses describing a link between variables are put to the test. Comparison tests, such as t-tests and ANOVAs, look for differences in the outcomes of distinct groups, whereas regression and correlation tests look for relationships between two or more variables. Your statistical test of choice is determined by a number of factors in your research design, including the types of variables you're working with and the distribution of your data. Analyzing qualitative data. Your data in qualitative research will almost always be packed with information and ideas. Rather than summarizing the data in numbers, you'll need to go through it thoroughly, evaluate its meanings, spot trends, and pick the sections that are most important to your research question. Thematic analysis and discourse analysis are two of the most prominent methods for doing so. Featured approaches. Thematic analysis concentrates on the data's content. It entails coding and organizing data to find significant themes. Analyze the discourse. The emphasis is on putting the data into perspective. It entails examining various levels of communication, language, structure, tone, etc. Depending on the goals of your study, you can analyze qualitative data in a variety of ways. Try reading several qualitative research papers in your field to get a sense of potential methodologies. Hope you find this step-by-step guide of 6 steps insightful and knowledgeable to create your research design. Anytime you feel like you are not able to do the designing on your own, call us right away and we will do that for you. Stay tuned to Research Graduate to get more such videos. Till then, happy research. Also, if you have any of the PhD and Master's related service requirements, visit our website www.researchgraduate.com. Check out the description for more contact details.